Young girl eaten alive by Komodo dragon in front of friends. How will this terrifying story unfold? To find out, watch the video to the end. But first, please subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications to get more stories like this. The warm afternoon sun beat down on the small Indonesian village of Rinca, where a group of children played near the edge of the jungle. The lush greenery provided the perfect backdrop for their laughter, their games filling the air with a light-hearted energy that mirrored the day's clear skies. Among the children was 9-year-old Aisha, known for her adventurous spirit and bright pink dress that she wore with pride. She was a leader among her friends, always the first to suggest a new game or explore a hidden corner of their village. Her parents often warned her to stay close to the house, but Aisha's curiosity was boundless, and the allure of the jungle was impossible to resist. That afternoon, Aisha and her friends decided to venture to a nearby clearing where the jungle met the beach. The spot was a favorite of theirs, a place where they could collect seashells and build forts out of driftwood. The children knew the jungle was home to wildlife, monkeys, birds, and the occasional monitor lizard, but they had never encountered anything truly dangerous. Until that day. As the children played, building a small fort out of sticks and leaves, a rustling sound came from the underbrush. At first, they paid it no mind, assuming it was a bird or a monkey. But the rustling grew louder, closer, and soon even the chatter of the children fell silent. "What was that?" whispered Putu, one of Aisha's friends. His wide eyes darted toward the source of the noise. Aisha, always the brave one, stood up and peered into the jungle. "Probably just a lizard," she said confidently, though her heart quickened. She picked up a stick and tapped it on the ground. "Go away," she called, hoping to scare off whatever was lurking. The rustling stopped, and for a moment, all was quiet. The children exchanged nervous glances, unsure of whether to stay or run. But then it appeared. Emerging from the shadows was a Komodo dragon, its massive body covered in rough, scaly skin that glinted in the sunlight. Its tongue flicked out, tasting the air as its sharp, reptilian eyes fixed on the group of children. At nearly 10 feet long, the creature was a predator like no other, its muscular frame and powerful tail making it a force to be reckoned with. The children froze in fear, their instincts screaming at them to run. But Aisha, ever the protector, stepped forward, her small frame dwarfed by the giant reptile. She held out her stick, her hands trembling, but her resolve firm. "Go away," she shouted again, her voice steady despite the terror in her chest. The Komodo dragon didn't move, its unblinking gaze locked on Aisha. It took a single step forward, its claws digging into the soft earth. The children behind her began to back away slowly, their eyes wide with panic. "Aisha, come on," Putu urged, his voice cracking. "We have to go." But Aisha didn't move. She knew she couldn't turn her back on the creature, not when her friends were still so close. "Go," she whispered over her shoulder. All distracted, the Komodo dragon launched. Aisha's instincts kicked in, and she darted to the side, narrowly avoiding its snapping jaws. Her friends screamed and scattered, running as fast as their legs could carry them back toward the village. But Aisha remained behind, her heart pounding as she tried to keep the creature's attention on her. The dragon's powerful legs propelled it forward, its movements deceptively quick for its size. It lashed its tail, sending a spray of sand into the air as it closed the distance between them. Aisha stumbled, her stick slipping from her grasp as she fell to the ground. The Komodo dragon loomed over her, its massive jaws opening wide to reveal rows of razor-sharp teeth. Aisha's mind raced, her body frozen with fear. She could hear the distant shouts of her friends, but they seemed a world away. In that moment, Aisha's life flashed before her eyes, her parents' smiling faces, the games she had played with her friends, the laughter that had filled the air just moments ago. She thought of all the adventures she had dreamed of, the places she wanted to explore, the stories she wanted to tell. And then, everything went dark. Back at the village, Aisha's friends burst into the clearing, their cries for help drawing the attention of the adults. "Aisha," Putu shouted, tears streaming down his face. The dragon, it took Aisha. The villagers sprang into action, grabbing machetes, sticks, and anything else they could use weapons. Aisha's father, Ayub, led the charge, his heart heavy with fear and desperation. "Where is she?" he demanded, his voice shaking. Putu pointed toward the jungle. "By the beach. She stayed behind to protect us." Ayub's chest tightened, but he didn't hesitate. "Stay here," he ordered the other children. "We'll bring her back." The group of men moved quickly, their determination outweighing their fear. The jungle seemed eerily quiet as they approached the clearing, the only sound the rustling of leaves underfoot. Ayub's mind raced with prayers, each one begging for his daughter's safety. When they reached the clearing, the sight that met them was one they would never forget. The Komodo dragon stood over Aisha's lifeless body, its jaws dripping with blood. The men froze, horror etched on their faces as the reality of the situation sank in. Ayub's knees buckled, his world collapsing in an instant. "No," he cried, his voice raw with anguish. He rushed forward, waving his machete in a desperate attempt to drive the creature away. The Komodo dragon hissed, its sharp teeth bared, but it finally retreated into the jungle, its massive tail sweeping across the ground as it disappeared from view. Ayub dropped to his knees beside his daughter, cradling her broken body in his arms. Tears streamed down his face as he rocked back and forth, his cries echoing through the trees. The other men stood in silence, their heads bowed in grief and respect. The news of Aisha's death spread quickly through the village, shattering the hearts of all who knew her. The children who had been with her struggled with feelings of guilt and sadness, haunted by the memory of her bravery. "She saved us," Puta said through his tears. "She was the bravest of all of us." The village came together to mourn, their sorrow shared as they honored Aisha's memory. Her funeral was a somber affair, held beneath the shade of the village's oldest tree. Flowers were laid at her grave, and stories of her kindness and courage were shared by all who had known her. "She was a light in this world," Ayub said, his voice heavy with emotion. "And though she is gone, her spirit will live on in our hearts." In the days following Aisha's funeral, the village was shrouded in a profound silence. The children no longer played by the jungle's edge, and the laughter that once filled the air had been replaced by whispers of sorrow and regret. Aisha's absence was felt by all, her bright smile and fearless nature leaving a void that no one could fill. Ayub spent most of his days by Aisha's grave, tending to the flowers that villagers continued to place there. He spoke to her softly, as though she could still hear him. "You were so brave, my little one," he whispered one morning. "I only wish I could have protected you." The other villagers, while grieving, began discussing how to prevent such a tragedy from happening again. The Komodo dragons had always been a part of life on the island, their presence both respected and feared. But Aisha's death had shaken them to their core, and they knew they needed to take action. "We can't let this happen to another child," said Puta's father during a village meeting. "We need to find a way to keep the dragons away from the village." Some suggested building stronger barriers, while others proposed relocating the dragons to a different part of the island. Ayub, however, remained silent, his thoughts consumed by memories of his daughter. When he finally spoke, his voice was filled with determination. "I will not let Aisha's sacrifice be in vain," he said. "We will find a way to coexist with these creatures without putting our children at risk." Meanwhile, Aisha's friends struggled to make sense of what had happened. They often gathered at the beach where they had last seen her, sitting in a circle and sharing stories about her bravery. "She always stood up for us," said Pito, his voice trembling, "even when she was scared." Clara, another friend, nodded. "She was the best of us. She always said we could do anything if we were brave enough." The children decided to honor Aisha in their own way. They began collecting shells, rocks, and driftwood to create a memorial on the beach, a small but meaningful tribute to their friend. They placed it near the spot where she had faced the Komodo dragon, arranging the items into the shape of a heart. "She would have liked this," Clara said softly as she placed the final shell. As the days turned into weeks, Ayub found himself unable to rest. He spent his nights researching Komodo dragons, poring over old books, and speaking with elders who knew the creatures well. He learned about their habits, their territories, and the reasons they might venture closer to the village. "They're not evil," said one elder, a woman named Nyoman. "They are simply animals, doing what they must to survive. But we must be cautious, for they are powerful and unpredictable." Ayub took her words to heart, channeling his grief into action. He began organizing patrols around the village, enlisting the help of other men to keep watch for dragons. They carried sticks and machetes, ready to protect their families if needed. But Ayub knew that vigilance alone was not enough. He wanted to understand the dragons, to find a way to live alongside them without fear. It was a daunting task, but he was determined to honor Aisha's memory by making their village a safer place. One morning, as Ayub walked along the jungle's edge, he noticed something unusual. The underbrush near the beach had been trampled, and there were claw marks in the dirt. He followed the trail cautiously, his heart pounding as he ventured deeper into the jungle. After a few minutes, he came upon a clearing. There, nestled among the trees, was a Komodo dragon. But this one was different from the one that had taken Aisha. It was smaller, its movements slower and less aggressive. It was feasting on the remains of a deer, its powerful jaws tearing into the carcass. Ayub watched from a distance, his mind racing. He could see the dragon's strength, its primal instincts on full display. But he also saw something else, a creature that was simply trying to survive. When the dragon finished its meal, it turned and lumbered back into the jungle, disappearing from sight. Ayub exhaled, his hands trembling. He had faced his fear and come away with a newfound respect for the creatures that shared their island. Ayub's encounter with a Komodo dragon marked a turning point. He began to see the dragons not as monsters, but as part of the delicate balance of life on the island. He shared his observations with the village, encouraging them to view the creatures with both caution and understanding. "We must respect them," he said during a meeting, "but we must also protect ourselves." It is possible to do both. The villagers worked together to reinforce the barriers around their homes and gardens, using stronger materials to deter the dragons. They also created designated feeding areas on the outskirts of the village, leaving scraps of meat to keep the dragons from venturing too close. The changes were not immediate, but over time, they began to see results. The dragons stayed farther from the village, and the villagers felt a renewed sense of safety. Ayub took solace in knowing that Aisha's sacrifice had not been in vain. As life in the village returned to a semblance of normalcy, Ayub found himself drawn to the beach where Aisha's friend had built their memorial. He often sat there in the evenings, watching the waves and feeling the presence of his daughter in the gentle breeze. One night, as he sat alone, he noticed something glinting in the moonlight. Curious, he walked over to the memorial and saw a small, intricately carved shell lying at its center. It was unlike anything he had seen before, its surface etched with delicate patterns that seemed almost otherworldly. Ayub picked up the shell, turning it over in his hands. He couldn't explain why, but he felt a deep connection to it, a sense that it was a gift from Aisha, a reminder that she was still with him. He placed the shell in his pocket, his heart heavy with both grief and gratitude. As he walked back to the village, he whispered a promise to his daughter, "I will carry your light with me, always." The shell became a symbol of hope for Ayub and the village. He shared its story with the other villagers, who saw it as a sign that Aisha's spirit was watching over them. They began to leave small offerings of shells and flowers at the memorial, creating a place of reflection and remembrance. For the children, the memorial became a source of comfort. They would gather there to share stories, their laughter gradually returning as they celebrated Aisha's life. "She would want us to be happy," Clara said one day. "She wouldn't want us to be sad forever." Puda nodded, his voice steady. "She was the bravest person I've ever known, and I'll never forget her." Through their grief, the village found strength and unity. Aisha's memory became a guiding light, inspiring them to protect one another and to coexist with the creatures that shared their home. Ayub, though forever changed by his loss, found peace in knowing that his daughter's legacy would endure. As he stood by her grave one morning, watching the sunrise, he felt a sense of calm that had eluded him for so long. The world was still filled with beauty, even in the face of tragedy. And though Aisha was gone, her spirit remained, an everlasting part of the island she had loved so dearly. Months passed, and the village continued to adapt to its new way of life. The reinforced barriers and feeding stations kept the Komodo dragons at bay, and the sense of fear that had gripped the villagers began to ease. Yet Aisha's memory lingered in every corner of the island, a constant reminder of both the fragility and resilience of life. Ayub had become a central figure in the village's efforts to understand and coexist with Komodo dragons. His determination to honor Aisha's sacrifice drove him to learn everything he could about the creatures. He spent hours speaking with biologists and conservationists who visited the island, sharing his experiences and gaining new insights into the dragon's behavior. One of these visitors was Dr. Elena Martinez, a herpetologist who had spent years studying Komodo dragons in their natural habitat. She was fascinated by the measures the village had taken and was particularly moved by Ayub's story. "You've done something remarkable here," she told him during one of their conversations. "Most people would react with fear or anger, but you've chosen understanding." Ayub nodded, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "Fear doesn't solve anything," he said. It was Aisha who taught me that. She faced the dragon without hatred, only bravery. Dr. Martinez proposed a collaboration between her research team and the village. She wanted to study the impact of the feeding stations and barriers on the dragon's behavior, with the goal of creating a model that could be used in other communities facing similar challenges. Ayub agreed, seeing it as an opportunity to ensure that Aisha's legacy would extend far beyond their small island. The research began in earnest, with Dr. Martinez and her team setting up observation points and cameras throughout the jungle. Ayub and a few other villagers joined them, eager to contribute to the project. For Ayub, each trek into the jungle was both a reminder of his loss and a chance to find meaning in it. During one such trek, the team stumbled upon a clutch of Komodo dragon eggs buried in the sandy soil. Dr. Martinez crouched down, her face lighting up with excitement. "This is incredible," she said. "It's a sign that the population here is thriving." Ayub watched as she carefully examined the eggs, her movements precise and respectful. "Do you think they'll hatch safely?" he asked. Dr. Martinez nodded. "If they're left undisturbed, they should. But they'll face many challenges once they're born: predators, competition, and the struggle to find food." Ayub thought of Aisha, her bravery and selflessness. "They'll need to be strong," he said quietly. "Just like my daughter." As the research progressed, Ayub found himself forming an unlikely bond with the Komodo dragons. Though he would never forget the tragedy that had befallen his family, he began to see the creatures in a new light. He observed their intelligence, their adaptability, and the intricate ways they interacted with their environment. One dragon in particular caught his attention, a young male with distinctive scars on its side, likely from a fight with another dragon. Ayub often saw it near the feeding stations, its movements cautious but curious. He nicknamed it Luca, after a word in the local language that meant survivor. Luca seemed to recognize Ayub as well. Over time, the dragon grew more comfortable in his presence, allowing him to observe from a closer distance. Ayub felt a strange sense of connection to the creature, as though they shared an unspoken understanding of loss and resilience. Back in the village, Aisha's friends continued to visit the beach memorial, now a cherished gathering place for the community. The children had taken it upon themselves to maintain the site, adding new shells, flowers, and small trinkets to honor their friend. It became a place of healing, where laughter gradually returned and the bonds between them grew stronger. One afternoon, as the children played near the water, Clara noticed something glinting in the sand. She bent down to pick it up, her eyes widening as she realized it was another intricately carved shell, similar to the one Ayub had found months earlier. She ran to show it to the others, her excitement bubbling over. "Look, it's just like the one Aisha's dad found." Pudu examined a shell, his brow furrowed. "Where do you think it came from?" "I don't know," Clara admitted, "but it feels special. Like it's a sign from Aisha." The children decided to place the shell at the memorial, believing it to be a gift from their friend. It became a symbol of hope, a reminder that Aisha's spirit was still with them. As the months turned into a year, the village began to see the fruits of their efforts. The Komodo dragons remained at a safe distance, and the feeding stations had reduced the number of incidents involving the creatures. Dr. Martinez's research yielded valuable data, and she often spoke of the village's success at conferences and in academic papers. Ayub, however, felt that his work was far from over. He continued to patrol the jungle, keeping a watchful eye on both the dragons and the villagers. Luca remained a frequent visitor to the feeding stations, and Ayub often found himself sitting nearby, observing the dragon's behavior. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Ayub noticed Luca lingering near the edge of the clearing. The dragon seemed restless, its movements more agitated than usual. Ayub approached cautiously, his machete at his side, though he had no intention of using it. "What's wrong, Luca?" he murmured, his voice calm and steady. The dragon turned to look at him, its sharp eyes meeting his. For a moment, Ayub felt a strange sense of connection, as though the creature was trying to communicate something. Then, without warning, Luca bolted into the jungle, its powerful legs carrying it out of sight. Ayub hesitated for only a moment before following. His instincts told him that Luca's behavior was significant, and he couldn't shake the feeling that the dragon was leading him somewhere. The jungle was dense and dark, the sounds of nocturnal creatures filling the air. Ayub moved carefully, his footsteps muffled by the soft earth. He followed Luca's trail, the broken branches and trampled underbrush guiding him deeper into the wilderness. After what felt like an eternity, he emerged into a small clearing. There in the center was a sight that took his breath away, a clutch of Komodo dragon eggs, just beginning to hatch. Tiny heads poked out of the shells, their scales glistening in the moonlight. Luca stood nearby, watching over the hatchlings with a protective air. Ayub realized that the young dragon had led him here, as though seeking his help to ensure the safety of the next generation. Kneeling in the soft dirt, Ayub felt a surge of emotion. He thought of Aisha, her bravery, her love for life. She had given everything to protect others, and now, in this moment, he felt her spirit guiding him once again. "I'll keep them safe," he promised, his voice barely above a whisper. "Just like you would have." Ayub returned to the village the next morning, his heart lighter than it had been in months. He shared the story of the hatchlings with Dr. Martinez and the other villagers, who were amazed by his encounter. Together, they devised a plan to monitor the nest and ensure the hatchlings had the best chance of survival. For Ayub, it was a way to honor Aisha's memory, a chance to turn his grief into something meaningful. He spent countless hours at the nest, watching over the young dragons as they grew stronger. Luca remained a constant presence, his bond with Ayub deepening with each passing day. In time, the hatchlings ventured out into the jungle, ready to face the challenges of life on their own. Ayub watched them go with a sense of pride and peace, knowing that he had done his part to protect them. Back at the village, the beach memorial had grown into a vibrant tribute to Aisha's life. The children continued to care for it, adding new decorations and sharing stories of their friend. It became a symbol of hope, resilience, and the unbreakable bonds of community. As Ayub stood by the memorial one evening, watching the waves lap against the shore, he felt a sense of closure. Aisha's spirit was all around him, in the laughter of the children, the strength of the villagers, and the life he had helped nurture in the jungle. Though she was gone, her legacy would live on, a reminder of the courage and love that had defined her short but extraordinary life. As Ayub reflected on the bond he had formed with Luca and the hatchlings, he realized just how much had changed since Aisha's tragic passing. The village had transformed from a place of fear to one of coexistence, and Ayub himself had gone from a grieving father to a protector and advocate for the Komodo dragons. But he couldn't shake the feeling that there was still more to do, more he could learn, more ways to honor his daughter's memory. One day, Dr. Martinez approached Ayub with an idea. "You've developed an incredible relationship with Luca," she said. "It's not something we often see between humans and Komodo dragons. I think it could be the basis for a larger project, something that could benefit both the dragons and communities like yours." Ayub raised an eyebrow. "What kind of project?" Dr. Martinez smiled. "An educational program. We could bring people from other villages to learn about the dragons, how to coexist with them, and the importance of preserving their habitat. And who better to lead it than you?" The idea resonated deeply with Ayub. "Aisha always wanted to help others," he said softly. "If this program can save even one life, it'll be worth it." The program, called Living with Legends, began to take shape. With Dr. Martinez's help, Ayub developed a series of workshops and activities designed to teach villagers about Komodo dragons. They included everything from safety measures and habitat preservation to first-hand observations of the dragons in the wild. Word of the program spread quickly, and soon people from neighboring villages began arriving to participate. Ayub found himself at the center of a growing movement, his story of loss and resilience inspiring others to view the dragons in a new light. One of the first groups to visit included a young boy named Risal, who reminded Ayub of Aisha in many ways. Risal was curious, fearless, and endlessly fascinated by the dragons. He peppered Ayub with questions during the workshops, his eyes lighting up with every answer. "Do you think they understand us?" Risal asked one afternoon as they watched Luca from a safe distance. Ayub smiled. "In their own way, I think they do. Luca knows I'm not here to hurt him, and I think he trusts me because of that." Risal nodded thoughtfully. "I want to be like you when I grow up. I want to help protect them too." The boy's words filled Ayub with a sense of purpose. He realized that through the program, he was not only teaching others about the dragons, but also inspiring a new generation of caretakers and advocates. Meanwhile, Luca continued to be a central figure in Ayub's life. The dragon's presence became a symbol of the delicate balance between humans and wildlife, a reminder of the mutual respect that made coexistence possible. Ayub often found himself marveling at Luca's intelligence and resilience, traits that had earned the dragon a special place in his heart. One evening, as Ayub sat by the feeding station, Luca approached him with an unusual object in his jaws, a large, weathered bone. The dragon dropped it at Ayub's feet, its amber eyes watching him expectantly. Ayub picked up the bone, examining it closely. It was ancient, its surface etched with marks that spoke of its long history. "What have you found, Luca?" he murmured, a sense of wonder filling him. Dr. Martinez, who happened to be nearby, gasped when she saw the bone. "Ayub, this is incredible," she said, taking it from him. "It looks like it could be a fossil, maybe even from a prehistoric Komodo dragon." The discovery sparked a new wave of excitement among the researchers and villagers alike. Dr. Martinez and her team began excavating the area where Luca had found the bone, uncovering more fossils that provided valuable insights into the history of the island and its ancient inhabitants. For Ayub, the discovery was another way to honor Aisha's memory. "She always believed in the extraordinary," he said. "And this is nothing short of extraordinary." As the years went by, the Living with Legends program grew into something far greater than Ayub could have imagined. It became a beacon of hope for communities across the region, demonstrating that coexistence with wildlife was not only possible but essential. Ayub's story reached far and wide, inspiring documentaries, articles, and even a book written by Dr. Martinez. The book, titled The Dragon Whisperer, detailed Ayub's journey from grief to advocacy, his bond with Luca, and the lessons learned from Aisha's legacy. The success of the program brought new opportunities to the village, including funding for improved infrastructure and education. Ayub used part of the funds to build a community center, where villagers could gather to learn, share stories, and celebrate their culture. The center became a hub for the program, hosting workshops, exhibitions, and events that brought people together in the spirit of understanding and conservation. Despite the passage of time, Ayub never forgot the day he had lost Aisha. Every year on the anniversary of her death, he visited her grave, bringing fresh flowers and spending hours in quiet reflection. He often brought Luca with him, the dragon's presence a source of comfort and strength. One such visit brought an unexpected surprise. As Ayub knelt by the grave, Luca began to dig in the dirt nearby, his powerful claws uncovering something buried just beneath the surface. Ayub watched in astonishment as the dragon unearthed a small, intricately carved shell, the third of its kind to be found since Aisha's passing. Tears filled Ayub's eyes as he held the shell in his hands, its delicate pattern shimmering in the sunlight. "You're still with us," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I'll never stop carrying your light, Aisha." The shell was placed at the memorial on the beach, joining the others as a symbol of Aisha's enduring presence. For Ayub and the village, it was a reminder that even in the face of loss, love and hope could shine through. One day, as Ayub stood by the memorial, watching the waves lap against the shore, Risal approached him with a wide grin. The boy, now a teenager, had become one of the program's most dedicated participants, his passion for conservation rivaling Ayub's own. "Mr. Ayub," Risal said, holding up a small notebook filled with sketches and notes. "I've been working on something, a plan for a new project." Ayub took the notebook and flipped through its pages, his heart swelling with pride. Risal had outlined ideas for expanding the program to include more hands-on activities, like habitat restoration and wildlife tracking. "This is impressive," Ayub said, clapping Risal on the shoulder. "You've got a bright future ahead of you." Risal beamed. "It's all because of you," he said. "You and Aisha." The boy's words reaffirmed everything Ayub had worked for. Aisha's legacy had not only transformed their village, but it also inspired countless others to make a difference. As the sun set over the island, casting the sky in hues of gold and pink, Ayub sat by the feeding station, Luca resting peacefully nearby. He thought of all that had been accomplished, the lives that had been changed, and the hope that continued to grow. Aisha's spirit was all around him, in the laughter of the children, the strength of the villagers, and the bond he shared with Luca. Though she was gone, her light burned brighter than ever, illuminating a path forward for all who followed. And in that moment, Ayub knew that Aisha's story was far from over. It was a story of love, courage, and resilience, a story that would continue to inspire generations to come. As Ayub looked out over the beach, the waves rolling gently onto the shore, he felt a profound sense of purpose. The work he had done, the lives he had touched, had all been for Aisha, to honor the bright and courageous spirit that had left them too soon. Yet, despite all the progress, he knew the journey was far from over. The Living with Legends program had expanded beyond the island, gaining international recognition. Conservationists, educators, and even government officials visited the village to learn from Ayub and the community. The village had become a model for coexistence, a shining example of how humans and wildlife could share the same space with mutual respect. But with the increased attention came new challenges. More visitors meant more pressure on the island's delicate ecosystem, and Ayub worried about how to balance the needs of the people with those of the Komodo dragons. He shared his concerns with Dr. Martinez, who had become not only a trusted colleague but also a dear friend. "You're right to be cautious," Dr. Martinez said as they walked through the jungle one morning. "Success often brings new complications, but I believe your leadership is what will keep this balance intact." Ayub nodded thoughtfully. "It's not just about us anymore," he said. "This is about ensuring that future generations, like Risal's, inherit a world where they can thrive alongside these creatures." Risal, now a young man, had grown into a passionate conservationist under Ayub's mentorship. He had taken on a leadership role within the program, often leading workshops and helping to design new initiatives. One of his ideas was to create a wildlife observation deck at the edge of the jungle, where visitors could safely watch the dragons without disturbing their habitat. The project was ambitious, but Risal was determined to make it a reality. He enlisted the help of other villagers, as well as the conservation team led by Dr. Martinez. Together, they worked tirelessly to bring the observation deck to life, using sustainable materials and ensuring minimal impact on the environment. The day the deck was completed was one of celebration and pride. Villagers and visitors alike gathered for the grand opening, marveling at the breathtaking view of the jungle. From the deck, they could see Luca and other dragons moving through the underbrush, their powerful forms a reminder of the island's unique beauty. "This is incredible," Ayub said, clapping Risal on the back. "You've created something truly special." Risal beamed. "I couldn't have done it without you. Everything I've learned, it's because of you and Aisha." As the observation deck became a popular attraction, Ayub turned his attention to another pressing issue, the threat of poaching. While the village had done an excellent job of protecting the Komodo dragons within their territory, reports of illegal hunting in other parts of the island had begun to surface. Ayub, Dr. Martinez, and Risal worked together to address the problem, reaching out to local authorities and conservation organizations for support. They organized patrols to monitor the island's most vulnerable areas and set up a hotline for villagers to report suspicious activity. One evening, during one of the patrols, Ayub and Risal came across a disturbing sight, a trap set near a watering hole, its sharp metal teeth ready to ensnare any creature that wandered too close. Ayub's heart sank as he dismantled the trap, the thought of such cruelty weighing heavily on him. "This is why we can't stop," he said to Risal, his voice firm. "The dragons can't protect themselves from this. It's up to us to be their guardians." Risal nodded, his determination mirroring Ayub's. "We'll stop them," he said, "whatever it takes." The fight against poaching brought new challenges and dangers. The patrols often encountered individuals who were less than cooperative, their motives driven by greed rather than respect for the island's ecosystem. But Ayub refused to back down, his resolve fueled by his love for Aisha and the belief that her legacy could inspire real change. One night, while on patrol, Ayub and Risal heard voices in the distance. Moving cautiously, they approached the source of the sound, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. What they found was a group of men attempting to capture a young Komodo dragon, its terrified hisses echoing through the jungle. "Stop!" Ayub shouted, stepping into the clearing. The men froze, their faces a mix of surprise and defiance. "This is illegal," Risal added, his voice steady despite the tension in the air. "You need to leave now." The men exchanged glances, their grip on the ropes tightening. For a moment, it seemed as though they might fight back. But the sound of footsteps approaching the rest of the patrol caused them to reconsider. Muttering curses under their breath, the men released the dragon and disappeared into the night. Ayub and Risal worked quickly to free the dragon, their hands gentle as they removed the ropes. The creature's golden eyes reflected both fear and gratitude as it slinked back into the jungle, disappearing into the shadows. "That was close," Risal said, exhaling a shaky breath. Ayub nodded. "But we did the right thing. And we'll keep doing it, no matter what." The encounter served as a stark reminder of the challenges they faced, but it also strengthened their resolve. Ayub and Risal continued their efforts, working tirelessly to protect the dragons and educate others about their importance. The village rallied behind them, their collective spirit a force to be reckoned with. Together, they built a network of allies, including local authorities, conservationists, and even international organizations. Their fight against poaching became a symbol of hope, a testament to the power of community, and the legacy of one brave little girl. As the years went by, the village flourished. The Living with Legends program became a global initiative, inspiring communities around the world to embrace coexistence and conservation. Ayub, now older but still as passionate as ever, watched with pride as Risal and others carried on the work they had started. One evening, as Ayub sat by the beach memorial, Luca approached him. The dragon had grown older as well, its once bright scales now dulled with age. But the bond between them remained as strong as ever. Ayub reached out, his hand resting gently on Luca's head. "You've been a good friend," he said, his voice filled with gratitude. A reminder of all the good that can come from understanding. Luca rumbled softly, a sound that Ayub had come to recognize as affection. Together, they watched the sun dip below the horizon, the sky painted in hues of orange and pink. As the years turned into decades, the village's story became a legend in its own right, a tale of courage, resilience, and the unbreakable bond between humans and nature. Aisha's memory lived on in every workshop, every patrol, and every effort to protect the dragon she had loved so much. Ayub, now in his twilight years, found solace in knowing that her legacy would endure. Sitting on the observation deck one evening, he watched Risal lead a group of children in a workshop, their laughter and curiosity filling the air. "She'd be so proud," Ayub said softly, his words carried away by the breeze. "Of all of us." And as the sun set over the island, casting a golden glow over the jungle, Ayub felt a sense of peace he hadn't known in years. Aisha's light continued to shine, illuminating a path forward for all who followed. Ayub sat on the observation deck, his hands resting on the railing as he gazed out over the jungle. The soft hum of cicadas filled the air, mingling with the distant calls of birds settling in for the night. Though his body was older and slower, his spirit remained unshaken. The years had brought him wisdom and peace, but also a deep understanding of the delicate balance they had fought so hard to achieve. He watched as Risal, now a confident young leader, guided a group of visitors through the program. The children in the group were wide-eyed with wonder, their faces lighting up as Risal pointed out a Komodo dragon moving gracefully through the underbrush. Ayub smiled, his heart swelling with pride. Risal had grown into a beacon of hope for the village, embodying the values Aisha had inspired in all of them. As the visitors dispersed, Risal climbed the observation deck to join Ayub. He carried a notebook filled with sketches and notes, his enthusiasm evident even after a long day. "How was today's group?" Ayub asked, his voice warm. Risal grinned. "Incredible. They were so curious, especially the kids. One of them asked if the dragons have names." Ayub chuckled. "What did you tell them?" "I said some of them do, like Luca. But I also told them that the dragons have their own way of existing, and we're just here to observe and respect." Ayub nodded, his gaze returning to the jungle. "You've come a long way, Risal. You've made this program something truly special." Risal's expression softened. "It's all because of you, Ayub. You showed me what it means to care, to fight for something bigger than yourself." As the evening wore on, the two men reminisced about the journey that had brought them here. Ayub shared stories of his early days with the program, the challenges they had faced, and the lessons he had learned from Luca and the other dragons. Risal listened intently, soaking up every word like a student eager to learn from a master. "I used to think the dragons were our enemies," Ayub admitted, his voice tinged with regret. "But Aisha, she saw them differently. She saw the beauty in them, even when they seemed frightening. It was her courage that opened my eyes." Risal placed a hand on Ayub's shoulder. "She would be so proud of everything you've done. We all are." The two men sat in comfortable silence for a while, the stars beginning to twinkle overhead. Ayub felt a deep sense of gratitude for Risal, for the village, and for the chance to carry on Aisha's legacy in a way that honored her spirit. The following day brought an unexpected surprise. As Ayub tended to the flowers at Aisha's grave, a group of researchers from a prestigious international conservation organization arrived in the village. They had heard about the Living with Legends program and were eager to collaborate, bringing new resources and expertise to the effort. One of the researchers, a woman named Dr. Hannah Keller, approached Ayub with a proposal. "We'd like to create a documentary about your village and the work you've done here," she said. Your story is extraordinary, and we believe it could inspire people around the world to take action for conservation." Ayub hesitated, the idea both exciting and daunting. A documentary? I don't know. I'm not used to being in the spotlight. Dr. Keller smiled reassuringly. "It's not just about you, Ayub. It's about the village, the dragons, and Aisha's legacy. We want to show the world what's possible when people come together to protect what they love." After some thought, Ayub agreed. The documentary team began their work immediately, capturing footage of the village, the Komodo dragons, and the daily activities of the program. They interviewed villagers, researchers, and even visitors, each of whom shared their unique perspectives on the bond between humans and nature. One of the most poignant moments of the documentary came when Ayub visited Luca in the jungle. The camera crew followed at a respectful distance as Ayub approached the dragon, who lay basking in a patch of sunlight. Luca's golden eyes met Ayub's, and for a moment, it was as if time stood still. "He's taught me so much," Ayub said softly, his voice carrying the weight of years. "About resilience, about trust, and about the importance of understanding those who are different from us." The crew captured every word, their lenses focused on the quiet connection between man and dragon. It was a scene that would later move audiences to tears, a testament to the power of empathy and coexistence. When the documentary was released, it garnered widespread acclaim. Titled Guardians of the Dragon's Realm, it showcased the incredible journey of Ayub and the village, highlighting their triumphs and challenges in the fight for conservation. The film reached audiences around the world, sparking conversations about the importance of protecting endangered species and the ecosystems they inhabit. For Ayub, the response was overwhelming. Letters and messages poured in from people who had been inspired by the documentary, many of them expressing their admiration for Aisha's bravery and the legacy she had left behind. One letter, in particular, stood out. It was from a young girl named Lena, who wrote, "I saw your story, and it made me want to be brave like Aisha. I want to help animals and make the world a better place, just like she did." Ayub held the letter close to his heart, tears streaming down his face. Aisha's light had reached far beyond their small village, touching lives in ways he had never imagined. As the village continued to thrive, Ayub began to think about the future. He knew he wouldn't be around forever, and he wanted to ensure that the program would remain strong long after he was gone. He called a meeting with Rizal, Dr. Martinez, and other key members of the community to discuss his plans. "I've been thinking about succession," Ayub said, his tone serious but hopeful. "Rizal, you've shown incredible leadership and dedication. I believe you're ready to take on a larger role." Rizal's eyes widened. "You mean, you want me to lead the program?" Ayub nodded. "You've earned it. And I know you'll continue to honor Aisha's legacy while bringing new ideas and energy to the program." Rizal hesitated, the weight of the responsibility sinking in. But then he met Ayub's gaze and saw the trust and belief in his mentor's eyes. "I'll do my best," he said, his voice steady. "For you, for Aisha, and for the dragons." The transition was gradual, with Ayub mentoring Rizal every step of the way. Together, they refined the program, incorporating new initiatives and strengthening partnerships with conservation organizations. Rizal's passion and charisma made him a natural leader, and the villagers rallied behind him with unwavering support. Ayub, though stepping back from the day-to-day operations, remained a guiding presence. He spent his time documenting his experiences, writing a memoir that he hoped would inspire others to take up the mantle of conservation. The memoir, titled Aisha's Light, A Father's Journey of Loss and Legacy, became a bestseller, its pages filled with stories of courage, love, and the enduring bond between humans and nature. For Ayub, it was a way to preserve his daughter's memory and ensure that her light would continue to shine for generations to come. In his twilight years, Ayub found peace in the knowledge that Aisha's legacy was secure. The village had become a sanctuary not just for Komodo dragons, but for the people who had learned to coexist with them. The Living with Legends program was thriving under Rizal's leadership. Its impact felt far beyond the shores of their island. As Ayub sat by the beach memorial one last time, watching the waves lap against the shore, he felt a sense of completion. Luca approached him, the dragon's movement slower now with age, but its presence as powerful as ever. Ayub reached out, his hand resting gently on Luca's head. "We've come a long way, haven't we?" Ayub whispered, his voice filled with gratitude. "Thank you for being my companion on this journey." The dragon rumbled softly, its golden eyes reflecting the setting sun. Together, they watched as the horizon turned a brilliant shade of gold, a reminder that even in the face of loss, life could be beautiful. Aisha's light continued to shine, guiding them all toward a brighter future.